to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. Well, The Flash is back. That's pretty cool. Loving that, Here's the thing. This season, regardless of the statement of the showrunner yesterday, we're gonna take that, statement and put it completely aside. And we're going to just look at what this season has been so far. There's definitely this is the last season vibes to this show. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when a show is entering its final season, they come up with really weird story arcs, especially if the characters have reached a point in the story where they don't have any meaningful way to go forward. So, take this, this whole, this whole, situation with, what's going on at the Second City Citizen at the beginning of the season with, what's her name, with Iris and Allegra and all of that. Moving Allegra into the managing position, and then, Allegra having her trademark doubts about, what it is that they're doing, people not taking her seriously. That was, they touched on that in Armageddon, and this episode they don't really touch on any of that, but that feels like a final season thing, like a final season story arc. And then, the fact that in the, during the pandemic of it all, when, when they went on that hiatus and then they came back after season 7 and season 8, the Citizen has grown into this massive organization, and it's kind of interesting, to see that we have reached an entirely different kind of, it's almost a different world from where they left it, and now it comes back, and it's almost an entirely different thing, and it's designed where it's we are going, what it reminds me of? Family Ties, where, the mom is pregnant, and then they come back for the final season, and the kid is 5, just so the kid can get a few, good zings in, and it's that's what it kind of feels like here, is that it is designed where they advance things with no explanation, so that way they can have an interesting plot thread in the final season, which I'm fine with. I have no problem with that. But it is very apparent this is intended to be the final season. They were not intending for one more season of this, which it appears they're getting, based on the recent report with The Hollywood Reporter, that Superman and Lois and The Flash are the only 2 shows that are basically confirmed to be picked up for next seasons. And also that report from Deadline or Variety a few weeks back that, said that Grant signed a contract for $200,000 an episode for a 15-episode final season, for a 9th season, and beyond that, this is very obviously intended to be that. And then compound what this plot is for what is either going to be the first 5 or the entire 10. I think it's a 15-episode season. Keeping in mind what this is it's a clip show. It is a greatest hits. It is Nora and Bart going through the timeline and seeing their dad's greatest hits, and it's just they start in the Flash again. They're going through, and there's Zoom. There's this one. They're going back in time. Now, in this episode, it is in that interperiod between Barry's interaction with Oliver in The Scientist in season 2 of Arrow, and because that, and then 3 Ghosts with Greg Berlanti's trademark. Person gets somehow messed in the head and hallucinates people from their past. That it's such a thing that you watch something and it's yeah, okay, that's this. It happens all the time on all the CW shows, and then it also happened on You in season 2, and I was oh yeah, I forgot Greg Berlanti did this. That's kind of his thing. It's every season that's going to happen, where someone's going to get drugged, or someone's going to get hit by a metahuman, or someone's going to get hit in the head by something, or something's going to happen, and he's going to see this whole thing, unfold in front of him. And then it's like, so after that episode, Barry leaves, and Barry goes back to Central City, and it's the night of the particle accelerator explosion, and that's when he gets struck by lightning and all of that. So it's between that and I guess the full meat of the pilot of The Flash, which is the scene where he is what's it called, like, when he wakes up to Cisco and Caitlin hovering over him, because he's starting to come to at Star Labs. Like, it's in that interperiod. This one takes place on New Year's Eve. Barry's still unconscious. We get the meet cute between Eddie Thawne and Iris, which is alright, cool, I guess. But I think that really kind of indicates to me where we're going with a villain for this. I think the villain we're going to end up seeing in this show, in this episode, is going to be Eddie Thawne as Cobalt Blue. I think that's where we're headed, and I think that makes the most sense to me. Because what we're going to end up doing is most of the season, I think, is going to be like cut sideways or flashback to Bart and Nora fucking with the timeline and like trying to fix their fuck ups and all of that. And as that happens, and as they make and continue to make mistakes, and as they continue to kind of band-aid them, I mean, part of the problem is, like, Jay isn't explaining to them what the repercussion of timeline fuckery is. Like, Barry fucks up and does Flashpoint, and it's like, oh, cool. Like, we gotta pull him out of the timeline and sit him down and be like, okay, so here's why you can't do that. Now here, I guess it's because Jay personally benefited by being resurrected from the dead, and, I think that, so he's like, I will allow this, but he really needs to have the cup talk with them. I'm sorry. They need to have that conversation about, like, look, you're gonna keep fucking with the timeline, things are gonna get, fucked up, and it's gonna get worse, and it's gonna get worse, and things are gonna keep happening, and then we're gonna end up with a fucking speedster villain that we never anticipated. Like, they need to have that conversation, and they haven't. It seems also like they're trying to set up a little bit of Justice U. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season there is a backdoor pilot to Justice U, and if that is a really fucked up bumper, I guess that's someone with a bumper sticker that says, you have a horn, I have a gun, which majorly fucked up. Anyway, if not by the end of this season, because it appears the Flash can't be up for one more season, it appears that I wouldn't be surprised if they do the Justice U backdoor pilot as next year's crossover, in the same way that Legends had its, backdoor pilot, in the crossover. Like, Legends of Yesterday, Legends of Today, was the crossover in Season 2 of The Flash, Season 4 of Arrow. And it would be interesting to me to see how that works. Now, this is a very Barry light episode, and it feels like, if anyone remembers after Elseworlds, where, Barry's off in Elseworlds, and because they shot Part 2 mostly in Gotham was shot in Pittsburgh, I want to say. I want to say they shot it in the same place as Dark Knight. So because they shot it in Pittsburgh, Grant was in Pittsburgh, and they were doing reshoots, and they couldn't just not do the show. So it's a very Barry light episode. Now here, I don't think that Barry is appearing anywhere else. It's just a very Barry light episode. Like, you get a quick shot of him unconscious, which I'm not entirely sure why they couldn't just do, why they couldn't just use footage from back then instead of using visibly almost a decade later Barry, rather than, young Barry from way back when. Because, I'm thinking about it, there's an episode of Frasier where Frasier and Niles go through Niles' memories, and it's like they're standing in scenes from earlier in the show. They didn't recreate the scenes, I'm like, and this is a fucking TV sitcom 20 years ago, and they did that. And it's like, it seems easier to just do that than, no, it definitely is easier to just have Grant lay in a bed for 5 minutes and have them talk over him while potentially being unconscious. Like, but the thing is, it's just one of those things where it's like, it just looks a little weird, because it's like, well, I know what these characters looked like 10 years ago, and I know what, you know, what they look like now. So to say that this is the same person is a little silly to me, you know. Like, it is just like, you know, well, this is what we're gonna do because it's easier to do this. What else do we have? So, I think that there's really not much else to talk about. I mean, Eddie was kind of a dick in this episode, but if I remember my season 1 correctly, Eddie was also kind of a dick in season 1 for a good amount of it, until he kind of has a turnaround about halfway through the season, when he starts trying to endear himself to other people, once he realizes he really has to. And that's the thing too, it's like, the timeline is still getting fucked with. I mean, I don't know why they thought they're getting that being fixed, but the idea that, like, you have Eddie and Eddie and Joe talking about people being streaked away. It's like, well, Barry's still in a coma. Barry doesn't start being the Flash until he comes out of the coma a few months later. He's in the coma for almost a year, I thought, because he's in the coma for because he goes into the coma, it's Christmas, and it's season 2 of Arrow. So it's right before the mid-season finale of Arrow. Or it is the mid-season finale of Arrow. So then the entire back half of season 2 of Arrow happens. And then season 3 of Arrow starts, and that's when Barry's out of the coma. Because that's when he's on the roof with Oliver talking about how he doesn't know what he's going to do, and how he can live up to being the hero that Oliver is. So I think that, you know, so we're still well in the region of, you know, now the idea of metahumans has been introduced earlier. Now the idea of, like, they don't have the, like, that's the problem that comes next, is that, okay, you arrested these, the Royal Flush Gang, but at the same time, it's like, you didn't really, you know, you don't have the information to, you know, actually lock them up in a way, because you don't have the metahuman dampeners yet, because they haven't been invented yet. And it's going to feel weird, I think, for a lot of the season to not have Cisco there, and I think that Tom Cavanaugh will come back, I don't know, to play Harrison Wells, if needed. I have a feeling that, what's his name won't come back. I have a feeling Carlos Valdez won't come back for long-term stints. I could see them doing a mini stint of, a mini stint with, what's his name? With Harrison Wells. Because I think you kind of have to. Like, that would be the thing. It's like, you know, I think you need to have that. And there was really one thing that I really found really funny, and that was, Bart agonizing over how him fucking with Bart has this thing where he wants to be the Flash. Like, that's his thing. He's going to be the Flash after his dad passes. And because he's going to be the Flash after his dad passes, he needs to, you know, be perfect and do everything right and all of that. So he's agonizing over fucking with the timeline. And then at the end of the episode, he breaks down the Jet. He's like, I don't think I can be the Flash. I keep messing with the timeline. And Jay's like, what, are you kidding me? Like, if messing with the timeline meant you couldn't be the Flash, Barry couldn't be the Flash. Like, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, the whole thing was, like, to me, that whole inner conflict that Bart had was silly. But, like, it made sense that he would have that. But for the audience, it's one of those things where it's like, we're on season 8 of this TV show now, and season 3 of the show opened with Flashpoint. And like, if you go through and look at all the times Barry's traveled through time and fucked something up, like, you'd be there for a while. Where it's like, season 1 he does it a few times, season 2 he does it a few times. Like, it seems near constant that he's fucking with the timeline and doing things. Also, now that I think about it, it's a little weird that they made this thing where they made it seem like Barry was being pushed to the absolute edge when he was fighting Savitar by making time remnants, but he made a time remnant in what's it called in season 2. So yeah, I don't know. That was just a nice thought of, but it is one of those things where it's like, you know, and also now that we have all these time traveling speedsters, is there any reason why he couldn't call help from the future? Well, I mean, he wouldn't call help from the future, but is there any reason why the future couldn't come and help? Like, it is so stupid. And that would have eliminated Savitar from existence, because then he wouldn't have had to call the time. Anyway, moving on. What else is there to address? Well, no, because in that timeline, Iris is dead, so you don't have Bart, you don't have Nora. Yeah, I mean, it is a really, like, this episode was not as entertaining as any of the ones from Armageddon. I think that it would be, you know, I think that having this idea of Bart having, or Barry having to reckon with a villain accidentally created by his kids, who happens to be the ex-fiancé. And I think the thing is, this would have a little bit more teeth, I think, if it weren't for the fact that they just... I mean, I think the reason they just did it was to kind of give you a sense of where it's going. Like, they just did this in Armageddon, where, you know, Grant is... what's his name? Thawne marries Iris to get under Barry's skin and take his life. And it's like... yeah, that's cool and all. Like, I get that. But if that's going to be where we're going with this season, I would have preferred they didn't do that in Armageddon. Because it's like, well, we've seen this already. And it's not like we saw this already 5 years ago, or we saw it already 4 years ago. We saw this already, like, 6 months ago. In this same season. And I'm for the idea. Like, I'm for the idea of doing that. I just would have preferred they didn't do it in Armageddon before doing it again here, if that's where they're going. If that's not going, I'm fine. But based on how this episode kind of works, it doesn't seem like they're going to go elsewhere with it. Like, it seems like that's what they're building toward, and that's what they're going to be doing. So yeah. So we'll wrap up there for today. Hopefully the phone call I got in the middle didn't interrupt the recording. And it wasn't even a phone call I answered, which made it even shittier, because it was a phone call that it was a spam call. So, yeah, so The Flash on Wednesday nights, it appears, on CW. It's available the next day on CW Seed, or CW app, whatever it's called now. It is very worth your time to watch, I think. I think that, you know what, I would say don't watch it now, maybe, because I don't know where it's going to be able to say it's going to be a good investment of time to watch where this goes. I would say that maybe watch it on Netflix, or give it a few weeks. Let's see where this plot line goes, and let it, let the plot threads unspool a little bit, and then we'll see where we're ending up. And if we're ending up somewhere interesting, then maybe jump in, because you can do up to 5 weeks or 7 weeks back on the CW app, or just wait until a week after the season ends, and then you can watch the entire thing on Netflix. Because I think it's still on Netflix, so they haven't converted over to HBO Max yet. So yeah. So we'll wrap up there for today. And we have a lot happening this weekend. We have The Adam Project. We have Turning Red. I'm going to watch Turning Red tonight, The Adam Project tomorrow. But yeah, all of these things are happening. All of these things are going to be interesting. All of these things are going to be entertaining, and I hope they're all going to be entertaining. But in any case, they will all be reviewed on here. So, until next time, have a great rest of your week.